The pointing finger felt like a weapon. For Karen, a successful executive living in a newly gentrified brownstone, the colorful chalk drawings were a blight on her perfect sidewalk. For Maria, they were the only canvas her two young sons had. As Karen's voice cut through the quiet afternoon, accusing and cruel, she had no idea that a student across the street was filming, capturing the moment that would unravel one life and unexpectedly redeem another. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's life changed in an instant and wondered what happened after the camera stopped rolling? We're about to find out, so stick with me through this incredible journey of a woman's fall from grace and her fight to find her way back. The rage was a physical thing, hot and tight in Karen's chest. It had been simmering all day, a toxic byproduct of a deal that went south, and a loneliness that echoed in her empty, perfectly decorated brownstone. And then she saw it, a chaotic rainbow of chalk smeared across the clean grey slabs of the sidewalk she paid a fortune to maintain. There was a lopsided sun, a wobbly rocket ship, and worst of all, a crude stick figure family holding hands. It was the stick figure family that made the heat in her chest boil over. She saw the source huddled near the steps of the next building over. A woman with dark, tired eyes, and two small boys, their hands and jeans dusted with color. Karen didn't think. She just reacted. She strode toward them, her expensive yoga pants and fitted top a stark contrast to the mother's worn t-shirt and jeans. "Are you serious?" Karen's voice was sharp enough to make the younger boy flinch. The mother, Maria, pulled her sons closer, one hand on each of their shoulders. "They are just playing," she said, her English accented but clear. "This isn't a playground," Karen snapped, her finger jabbing the air toward the drawings. "This is private property. It looks like a slum. Do you have any idea what this does to property values? People like me pay to live in a clean, respectable neighborhood." The words "people like me" hung in the air, thick and ugly. Maria's protective stance hardened into one of quiet defiance. "It is just chalk. It will wash away with the rain. I want it gone now," Karen demanded. "And I don't want to see this mess again. If I do, I'll be calling the authorities. Maybe they can teach you about respecting other people's property." She turned on her heel and marched back to her door, feeling a grim satisfaction as she heard the mother quietly telling her boys to gather the chalk. She didn't see the teenager across the street lower his phone, his face a mixture of shock and disgust. She didn't know her moment of private fury was about to become public property. The next morning, the world had changed. Her phone was a vessel of poison, buzzing with notifications from people she didn't know. A friend sent her a link with the simple message, "Karen, what did you do?" The video was everywhere. Titled "Park Slope Karen Verbally Attacks Immigrant Family," it had millions of views. Her face, twisted in a snarl, was the thumbnail. Her words, stripped of context, were laid bare for the world to judge. Her first instinct was denial, then self-preservation. She called her boss at the marketing firm where she was a senior vice president. "It's a total misunderstanding," she said, her voice tight with panic. "They edited it to make me look bad. I'm the victim here. But the firm's board didn't care about her side. They cared about their brand. She was suspended by noon, pending an investigation that she knew was just a formality. Her friends sent texts of lukewarm support before going silent. Neighbors she'd known for years crossed the street to avoid her. She was a pariah. She refused to accept it. This was an attack, a witch hunt. She felt righteous in her anger, rejecting the world's verdict. But the world didn't need her acceptance. By the end of the week, the company had fired her, issuing a public statement about their commitment to diversity and inclusion. The life she had meticulously built over 2 decades had been demolished in less than 72 hours. The pointing finger in the video had turned back on her, and it had pushed her off a cliff. The weeks that followed were a blur of drawn curtains and takeout containers. The silence of her house was deafening. The only person who didn't abandon her was her younger sister, Chloe. She showed up one afternoon, pushed past Karen's half-hearted protests, and sat her down at the kitchen table. "You can't keep doing this," Chloe said gently. "This anger, it's been eating you alive for years, Karen, long before that video. You need to talk to someone." Karen wanted to scream, to tell her she didn't understand, but she was too tired to fight. Defeated, she agreed. The therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, was her last resort. For the first few sessions, Karen was guarded, repeating the same lines about being misunderstood and publicly shamed. Dr. Sharma just listened, letting the anger run its course. Then one day, she asked a simple question. "You mentioned the drawing of a family bothered you the most. Why do you think that is?" And for the first time in years, the dam broke. Karen started talking, and she couldn't stop. She talked about the years of fertility treatments, the hope and the disappointment, the one pregnancy that finally stuck. The joy, the planning, the nursery painted a soft, hopeful yellow. And then the horror of a late-term miscarriage, a silent delivery room, and a grief so profound it shattered her marriage and hollowed out her soul. That was 2 years ago. She had buried the pain under a mountain of work, ambition, and a carefully controlled environment. Seeing Maria with her 2 healthy, happy sons, creating a cheerful, messy family on the sidewalk, hadn't just been an annoyance. It had been an unbearable reminder of everything she had lost. The rage wasn't about chalk. It was about the universe's profound unfairness. For the first time, Karen cried, not tears of anger or self-pity, but of pure, unadulterated grief. She was finally mourning the child she never got to hold. That was the root of it all. The therapy didn't magically fix everything, but it cracked open a window in a room that had been sealed shut. A few weeks later, Karen took a small, terrifying step. She bought a simple card and a pen. She sat for an hour, writing and rewriting, trying to find words that weren't an excuse, but an explanation and an apology. She wrote about her loss, not to justify her actions, but so Maria might understand the source of the cruelty. She ended it with a simple, heartfelt, "I am truly sorry for the pain and fear I caused you and your children." With her heart pounding, she walked to Maria's building late one evening and slipped the envelope into the mailbox for apartment 2B. She expected nothing. She deserved nothing. A week passed. Then, one afternoon at the local grocery store, she saw Maria in the produce aisle. Karen froze, ready to turn and flee. But Maria saw her. Their eyes met over a pyramid of oranges. Karen's breath caught in her throat. Maria held her gaze for a long moment, then gave a single, slow nod. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't friendship, but it wasn't the hatred Karen had earned. It was a flicker of grace, the first small win in a battle she was only just beginning to understand. That flicker of hope was nearly extinguished a month later. Buoyed by her progress, Karen had started applying for jobs. She was a brilliant marketing executive, and her resume was impeccable. She landed an interview, then a second, and finally received a promising offer. It felt like she could finally start rebuilding. Then, 2 days later, the offer was rescinded. The email was polite but firm, citing a change in their hiring needs. Karen knew the truth. They had done a deeper background check. They had seen the video. Her name, her face, was toxic. The rejection sent her spiraling. It was a major setback that confirmed her deepest fear. She was irredeemable. The internet's judgment was a life sentence. That night, she opened a bottle of expensive wine she'd been saving and drank the entire thing. She re-watched the video, hating the woman on the screen. She scrolled through the thousands of comments calling her a monster. The external world was a relentless antagonist, and for the first time, she felt like it might win. For a week, she barely left her bed, ignoring Chloe's calls, convinced that selling her house and disappearing was the only option left. It was a notice tacked to a telephone pole that finally pulled her out of the haze. It was a cheaply printed flyer, with text in both English and Spanish. Save El Corazon Community Center, it read. The center, a vital hub offering everything from after-school care to legal aid for new immigrants, was losing its lease. The building had been sold, and the new landlord had tripled the rent. They had 30 days to raise an impossible sum of money, or they would be forced to close their doors forever. Out of a morbid curiosity, Karen walked the few blocks to the address. A small crowd of worried parents and organizers was gathered outside the humble storefront. And there, in the middle of the crowd, was Maria, her face etched with worry, holding her 2 boys' hands. Karen watched from across the street as Maria spoke to a local news reporter, her voice passionate as she explained what the center meant to her family. How they had helped her find this apartment, how her boys loved the art program, how it was the heart of their community. In that moment, Karen understood. Her attack hadn't just been on one family. It had been an attack on the very fabric of this community, a community that supported each other in ways she couldn't comprehend. She had screamed about property values while they were building a home. Her final test wasn't about getting a job or clearing her name. It was right here, in front of a fading brick building. She still had the substantial severance package from her old firm sitting untouched in her bank account. It was her escape plan, or maybe it was her path to redemption. The next day, she put on a simple pair of jeans and a blouse, armor for the most difficult meeting of her life. She walked into the community center and asked to speak to the director. a tired-looking but resilient woman named Sophia. Karen introduced herself and saw the flicker of recognition and distaste in Sophia's eyes. Before the director could shut her down, Karen laid out her plan. She had researched the new landlord, analyzed the center's finances, and saw a viable path forward. "I want to help," Karen said, her voice steady. "I have the funds from my severance. I can cover the new rent for the next 2 years, and I have 20 years of experience in marketing and fundraising. I can write the grants you need to become self-sustaining. I will work for free. All I ask is that you let me try." Sophia was silent for a long time, her expression unreadable. The offer was a lifeline, but it was coming from the enemy. She finally agreed, but with one condition. Karen had to present her proposal at a public community meeting that night. She would have to face everyone. The room was packed. Karen stood at the front, her hands shaking, and looked out at a sea of faces, skeptical, wary, and in some cases, openly hostile. She saw Maria in the 3rd row, her sons sitting quietly beside her. Karen took a deep breath and began to speak. She didn't make excuses. She told them about her grief, not as a justification, but as the source of a blindness she was only now learning to see past. She acknowledged the ugliness of her words and the harm she had caused, and then she laid out her plan for the center with detailed charts and a clear, practical timeline. When she finished, a heavy silence filled the room. No one moved. Karen's heart sank. This was it, the final rejection. Then a chair scraped. Maria stood up. All eyes turned to her. "What she did was wrong," Maria said, her voice clear and strong. "She hurt my family. She hurt all of us. But I read her letter. I see her here tonight. My grandmother used to say that a person's true character is not shown when they fall, but in how they choose to get back up." She looked directly at Karen. "I think everyone deserves a second chance to be better." The tension in the room broke. One by one, others began to nod. A quiet murmur of agreement grew into a vote of acceptance. The climax wasn't a standing ovation. It was a collective sigh of relief and a cautious, fragile offering of hope. Karen felt tears welling in her eyes, not of grief this time, but of gratitude. A year and a half later, El Corazon Community Center was thriving. The walls were covered in new artwork, much of it from the expanded after-school program. Karen was a fixture there, not as a wealthy donor who wrote a check, but as a part of the team. She spent her afternoons helping kids with their English homework, and her mornings writing grant proposals that secured the center's future. Her brownstone no longer felt like an empty monument to a life that had vanished. It felt like part of a neighborhood she was finally getting to know. One sunny afternoon, she was inside the center, watching Mateo and Leo draw on a large chalkboard that had been her first donation. They were drawing a sprawling, colorful city with lopsided buildings and a giant, smiling sun. Maria came over and handed her a cup of coffee, a simple, comfortable gesture between friends. "They are good," Karen said, smiling at the drawing. "They had a good teacher," Maria replied, with a small smile of her own. Outside, the rain from the night before had washed the city's sidewalks clean. It was a fresh canvas, waiting for something new to be created. The story of Karen and Maria shows that sometimes the people we see as villains are fighting battles we know nothing about. Do you believe that a single act, no matter how hurtful, can truly be forgiven if the person works hard enough to make things right? Or are some mistakes so public that they should never be forgotten? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who appreciates tales of real-life struggle and the difficult path to redemption. Thanks for listening,